So, would you consider supporting Bernie?
Um, I think for me, I have to be committed to maintaining something to the left of Bernie, because otherwise Bernie's going to be defenseless if Bernie gets elected. But other people are free to make their choices. And I would not discourage anyone for making a principled vote, for a candidate like Sanders, who's basically taken up our agenda. So, I think of it as like, well, if ranked choice voting were happening, just do that little thought experiment. If we had ranked choice voting, Greens would be voting Green first, and then they'd be supporting Sanders second. So people can, nuance that. And people are going to nuance that. Greens especially don't take marching orders. They're not going to vote for someone or against someone because you tell them. There's a lot of, I think, conviction within the Greens that we really need an independent political vehicle that's not corporate. And we're going to preserve it because we need it for the long haul, that our work should be on ranked choice voting rather than allowing ourselves to be, sort of permanently silenced. What other people do, I think, is really, people are going to make their choices. And
Sure.
There's already a lot of chatter among Greens. Many Greens also belong to the DSA, the Democratic Socialists. And people are making very thoughtful and principled choices, as they should.
Totally. So, as far as 2020 goes, and I just did the Green Way Forward podcast, and so I had a similar discussion with Mike O'Neill. I think, and like let me throw this at you, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I think that no matter what happens, for better or for worse, this is a huge moment for the Greens and for kind of like fringe political advocates in general, be it DSA, SA, and everybody else, because they're going to try to cheat Bernie again. Let's say they're successful at it. If they're successful at it, then you're going to have a whole new floodgate of a whole new generation where socialism is not a dirty word. That's what they want, where they don't connect with either of these two political parties, where they don't, they're totally fed up with the system. They only know war and recession their entire lives, and they're thirsty for a solution. If they're not successful in cheating him and Bernie becomes the nominee, which I think if Bernie is the nominee, I think he'll win. And let's say we do have Bernie in the White House, which is what I'm hoping for. Now, for the first time in my lifetime, and probably the first time in a very, very long time, I think you have somebody who is an ally to the Greens and to lefties in general, who I hope would extend some olive branches as far as cabinets go and stuff like that. So I think no matter what happens, for better or worse, this is a huge moment for the Greens and for just, I guess, political outsiders, however you want to put it. Would you agree with that? Do you think that's a fair assessment? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is really where the rubber hits the road right now. There is this rebellion that will not be suppressed. It will not be stopped. It will not be silenced. And, it's like an unstoppable object or an unstoppable force is meeting an immovable object, and that immovable object is the DNC and the Democratic Party and the oligarch funding and the war machine and all that's behind the Democratic Party power. And the question is, what's going to give here? And, in my lifetime, there have been some really powerful coalitions that have challenged that, like in the 60s and the 70s, when you had really the power of the civil rights movement and the power of labor, to really force political change. And that was a whole movement. It was, I forget what it was called, there was some kind of democratic reform effort at that time. And it got wrecked on the rocks of the Vietnam War, which is what sort of sabotaged that reform movement. And there's always been one thing or another that sabotages these reform movements, and they've been really powerful. But I think the rebellion is stronger than ever. It was really strong in my formative years because of the Vietnam War and because people were going off to that war and coming back in body bags. And that was everybody, you know, it was especially poor and people of color, but it was everyone. So there was enormous resistance at that time. But I think right now you have a whole generation that's looking at the equivalent of the Vietnam War. You know, they're locked in debt. They can't get out of it with the jobs that are out there. The climate is collapsing around us, and wars are blowing back at us with the potential to go nuclear. So I think anybody whose eyes are open now feels as, you know, as much kind of like anguish and political outrage as my generation felt when we were growing up. And this is absolutely unstoppable. I think it's uncontainable, but it's hard to see how the DNC and the Democratic Party establishment is going to give, because they are firmly in charge. Money is more concentrated into fewer hands than ever. You know, the contributions from Wall Street are off the charts. Corporate media is consolidated around them, and already we see the dirty tricks are well underway, you know, from the stacking of the DNC appointments that was pointed out by Kevin Gosztola.
Yes, he did an excellent job on that. And yeah, we talked about it on the Jimmy Dore show too. It was the thing I noticed was I was just like, okay, the least horrible resume here, like the least horrible. If we had to line it up from horrible to most horrible, the least horrible category is corrupt union leader. That's like the like least bad. Where it's like, well, they're a union leader. Okay, unions are good. They're a really corrupt one, though. They're not one of the good ones. They're a really corrupt one. And that's the least horrible of it. Now we get into big pharma. This is just a who of oligarchs. Like
it is the who's who. And then add to that, you've got the superdelegates, which are still there waiting in the wings. And then you have the role of the corporate media. And then you've got, you know, Bloomberg with his 1 or 2 billion, I forget what it is, but you know, that's going to carry weight as well, the money that he's throwing into this.
Plus he has he has the support from all those dogs in New York City. They all like him.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. He had an ad. You didn't see his talking dog ad?
Oh, yes, I did see
that. He's got those.
He shook the muzzle? Yeah.
Yeah. He shook the muzzle, but all the dogs support him because stop and frisk did not apply to them. So that's why they're fine with Mike.
Yeah, well, the DNC is at it, you know, and the corporate media is at it. And, you know, the oligarchs are really powerful in this country and around the world. And we're seeing, you know, rebellion, not just here, you know, but the global rebellion from Lebanon to Iraq to Chile, you know, and beyond. So there's some really ingrained forces here. And are you going to be able to fight that from inside the Democratic Party? The problem fighting inside the Democratic Party is that, you know, you get all this energy behind it and then you lose. And then everything gets taken apart. You know, it's like the castle in the sand. And then you got to start building it again. You know, you don't like have firm ground that you can keep building on. And that's why you want an independent political vehicle. And so, yeah, I really agree with you. This is an incredibly exciting moment. It's a moment of peril and possibility, you know, and which is it going to be? It's really on us to keep pushing in a way that brings us together. And I think trying to silence each other is not a principle of democracy. I think that, you know, electoral reform, which is within our reach, definitely is, you know, and we just got to be all about it and fighting really hard. And I agree completely that if Bernie is sabotaged, he's already being sabotaged, but if they are effective, the floodgates are going to open like never before into the Green Party. And I do want to just at least put in a word about a campaign that sort of represents all of this possibility that is with ranked choice voting, and that's in the state of Maine. We have a Green candidate running for Susan Collins' seat. Her name is Lisa Savage. It's lisaformaine.org, lisaformaine.org. And she's a public school teacher who's been a lifelong opponent of war. She was a co-chair of the national Bring the War Dollars Home campaign and been fighting for climate. I mean, she's got all the right opinions. She's completely unmuzzled and unafraid. And in that election, she's actually injecting real issues into the election. She's not being silenced as a spoiler, because ranked choice voting makes it impossible to spoil an election. So then you can get down to the issues. It's not like ranked choice voting is a be-all, end-all. It's not a magic bullet, but it's a gateway. It's an incredible gateway because it removes the fear factor. And the fear factor is used to shut down dialogue. And if you don't have dialogue, you don't have a democracy. So we need to get rid of the fear factor, and let's talk about it. Because once we talk about it, we win.
Yeah, I mean, I always would have these conversations, especially right after 2016. And I don't mean to flatter you here, but I would have those dialogues where it's like you talk about the fear factor, and I'm just like, look, if everybody was they just described 4 candidates and there was nothing else, you just described 4 people, Jill Stein would have won in a landslide. Just imagine that conversation. All right, here are your choices. We got this one person. She's part of a big political dynasty that really actually brought this country to its knees and opened up the floodgate for George W. Bush. And now via the Pied Piper strategy gave us this other guy that you're going to hear about in a minute. Okay, that other guy. Oh, yeah, and by the way, she got the Iraq war wrong. Used to be for universal health care until Big Pharma showed up with a check. Then she changed her tune. There's option 1. Option 2, a reality TV show game show host. Option 3, a guy who thinks you can solve healthcare like it's a car Uber app. Option 4, a Harvard-educated doctor who has a plan to address our climate catastrophe, a plan to give everyone healthcare, and a plan to eliminate crippling student loan debt. Make your choice. Like, who are you going to pick? Like, would anyone think twice about that? But that was
the great danger. And I don't know if I ever told you this quickly, but when I was first tricked into running for office, and this was like back in 2002, I was running for governor here in Massachusetts, and we fought our way into a debate because people were out in these huge mobs screaming at the Democrat-Republican debates, for being Pepsi and Coke, and they wanted more choices. This was back in 2002. Forced our way into a televised debate. In that debate, I gave the usual agenda for, cutting the military budget, greening our economy, healthcare as a human right through what we called was single payer at the time, the usual stuff. And it all went over like a lead balloon inside the studio. There was no live audience. It went over like a lead balloon. And usually the audiences, by the way, are handpicked so that they respond appropriately. As the corporate media would like them to.
Oh, I think we're really seeing that in the debate so far too. I don't know how much of it you've caught, but I've watched every one because I live tweet them and then stream after. If I wasn't live,
painful.
Oh yeah, no, live tweeting it keeps me sane. I wouldn't be able to tolerate it otherwise. But live tweeting at least makes it kind of fun, and you can like interact with other people who are like, yeah, this is ridiculous. I mean, that last one. And I don't like to speak in superlatives, but that last debate, and I stand by this, that CNN did, that was the worst display of news and information, even by our corporate media, I've ever seen in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. It was absolutely atrocious. If we had any type of media structure in this country, we don't. But if we did, everybody affiliated with that would have been fired immediately. It was unbelievable. It was unreal.
Yeah, incredible. And they all should have been fired anyhow for getting us into the Iraq War, So
right?
They were cheerleading. It's like, where is accountability here? Where's reality here? But just to complete that point, so I forced my way into that. Well, I should say the thronging crowd forced us into that debate. Our agenda went over like a lead balloon inside the studio, and then I walked out and I was mobbed by the press, who told me I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll that nobody knew was going on. And you can bet that was the last time they ever did an instant online viewer poll in a debate, because people would be, like not voting the way that they want them to. But to me, that it totally flipped my understanding of politics on its head, because I thought that what we were talking about, this agenda for people, planet, and peace was the fringe. And then I discovered, oh my God, that's not the fringe. This is what people are literally dying for. And that's why, to me, my mission here, it just like solidified. It's like what we're doing here is just helping to empower people to stand up and struggle for what we deserve and what we will win. It's like Alice Walker's saying that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have it, and it's do or die time. We got to use it. People really know that. And that's why this is such a powerful moment. And given the way the Democratic establishment is going, they are laying the groundwork right now for another sabotage of the Sanders campaign. They're going to split the party big time. It's going to be Dem exit. And sadly, this is likely to happen. That's not to say it's determinate. And I don't want to discourage anybody who wants to be out there really working for the Sanders campaign. But I'd say at the same time, let's not destroy Plan B, because we're going to need it. Even if Bernie wins, we need a party to Bernie's left, because he's going to need that extra oomph to help him get where he needs to go.
Not even just a political party. I mean, I've said it too. I'm like, look, if Bernie wins, I'm going to celebrate for one night, because everybody's earned it. So for one night, I am going to freaking celebrate, and I'm going to be in DC in January too. But then we all punch in. Because Bernie, the type of stuff Bernie wants to do, he will face, people who are going to be standing in his way in Congress. He's going to face resistance in Congress. He's going to face resistance from the media. He's going to face resistance from Wall Street. He's going to face resistance from the military-industrial complex. He's only going to be as effective as the movement behind him. So if we don't show up, he's not going to be able to do much. So it's like, it's not me, us. Please take that slogan literally. Because it's meant to be literal. Because it's like, if we're not all out there, whether you're, just an activist or whether you're a green or whether you're a content creator, whatever it is, if we're not all out there, he's not going to be able to do much. So, I feel you there.
And let me just say in advance, I really wish that his campaign right now would commit to voting reforms. Because that would be a real sign to the Greens that we're going to be collaborators here, and that he appreciates the support from his left. And if he's politically astute, which I think he is, he will very much appreciate support from his left. And if we have a commitment that he and the movement will be pushing for ranked choice voting, for getting big money out of politics, for public financing, for open debates, for removing really awful ballot access barriers, things like that, and voter suppression. We have a voter suppression agenda, but we need to add to that the voter suppression against progressives, which is this first past the post, lesser evil voting. That suppresses, a whole other class of voters as well, those who are politically progressive. So the ranked choice voting agenda has to get integrated into that other anti-voter suppression agenda. If the Sanders campaign were to do that, it would be a signal to Greens that we're going to be collaborators here, and the sooner the better. If he makes that commitment, and he really should, because it's no sweat off his back. It's a real boon. It's essential. It's a real tool that any progressive movement needs. They need, real unapologetic progressives to their left who can push further, and that way Sanders has much more support to, and progressives have much more support to keep their agenda, to keep the heat on for their agenda. And if that were to happen, it would really be a great sign and would help people just, be collaborative as best as we possibly can, as soon as we possibly can.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. it together and make it our own. Get your